Welcome back to Return to More. I'm your host, Jonathan Moore. Today's conversation is deeply personal for me. We're talking about mentorship, the kind that shapes your thinking, strengthens your confidence, and reminds you who you are when you forget. Because the truth is, none of us grow alone. Someone sees us before we see ourselves. Someone speaks life into us before we fully believe it. For me, one of those people is Dr. Ann Hart. Dr. Ann Hart is all the things that are good. She is an educator, a philanthropist, a community leader. She spent decades working in education to not only serve underprivileged communities, but ensure all students have access to a high-quality education. Before I bring in Dr. Hart, I want to reflect on how I first came to meet Dr. Hart in the segment More to Reflect On. So somewhere around 2016, 2017, I was serving as a principal of an elementary school in South Phoenix. Now, I heard of Dr. Hart, but didn't know her. I had heard about her because, as I mentioned in the introduction, she was such a giant figure, not only in education, but also in the community and philanthropy, and so her name often came up around many different topics. Well, one day, as it happened, while I was serving as a principal, Dr. Hart was in leadership at the State Department of Education. And as part of her portfolio, she oversaw a character education grant. And as my colleagues and I were working through the school improvement mechanisms, if you will, trying to ensure that our students in my school had a high quality education, one of the areas we wanted to address was character education. So as the principal, I applied for this grant, not knowing that it was in Dr. Hart's portfolio. I applied for the grant. We were the first school to have ever applied for this grant, and we received it. And so as part of the grant requirements, it required a visit to the campus. And so as it happened, one day during the school year, Dr. Hart came and she visited the campus. And before we got into the visit, we sat in my office and we talked. And what I've learned about Dr. Hart is she doesn't miss much, and she's often 2 or 3 steps ahead. So as we were sitting having a conversation where I thought we were getting to know each other, I now look back and know she already knew quite a bit about me before even entering the conversation. So she began to ask me about myself, how I came to the principalship, what were some of my goals, for the year, how the program was going, and just many different sentiments around how I approach leadership, what my thoughts were on education, and even the community. Now, mind you, the namesake of my school was also a good friend of Dr. Hart. That's how entrenched in the community she was. And so as I look back, I realized she probably had a good idea of the things I was already saying. So after our brief conversation around who I was, she then asked to take a tour of the campus. And so once again, not being familiar with her, knowing that she not only knew the namesake of the school, but also knew the district as a whole, a place where she resided, raised her family, all of those things. We began to walk around, and she began to make observations and just ask about, how the program was going, what were some of the outcomes that were happening, what challenges was I experiencing, and of course, not knowing Dr. Hart as the mentor, realizing that she was a state official, I was very careful with my language. But once again, Dr. Hart being 2 or 3 steps ahead, was definitely able to read in between some of the lines that I was giving. And so after the tour, very big campus, after the tour, we came back into the office and she said, Dr. Moore, very impressed with what I'm seeing. It's clear that implementation is working. It's clear that you're meeting your objectives. I am happy to, put these things in, the report for my visit. And certainly I'll follow up with you. And that's how the conversation ended. And I was like, great, state official, came to the campus, saw the grant program in action, thumbs up. Well, once again, knowing how entrenched Dr. Hart was in the community and how, especially in Arizona, the community is very small, if you will. And so Dr. Hart also happened to be really good friends with my best friend, who served as her hairstylist. And so, as it would happen, there was one year, the last year of my principalship, where my district had had some transitions, and it really caused me to evaluate just what I wanted to do, whether I was happy with where I was, whether I wanted to think about other opportunities that I might be a good fit for. And so during the course of that, I happened to go visit my friend, probably because he was also cooking. His studio was in his home. And lo and behold, Dr. Hart was there, being serviced. And so, we got to actually engage outside of the formal setting. And so during that time, she invited me into conversation, and I was able to talk a bit more openly just about how I was feeling, about the state of my leadership, about where I was leading, and about what I was thinking about in terms of what could be next. And I remember from that conversation, she was very affirming. She continued to tell me, based on what I saw and what I know, you're doing wonderful. You do have some challenges to navigate. I believe you are navigating them. Just really was affirmational and pouring life into me, especially when not too many others were during that particular time in my career. So fast forward, I'm in the last year of my principalship. Dr. Hart had retired from state service after a number of years, not only in education, but also at the highest levels of state service, and began to have another conversation, because by that time we had developed a relationship. And she says in her way, you can reach out to me if you need anything or want insight. And that was all the invitation I needed. So during the third year of my principalship, I reached out and said, hey, we're having these transitions. Obviously, she was already aware, being from the community, and I'm not sure that this is still the best place for me. And so she helped me sort of frame my thinking and map out opportunities that might exist. Well, lo and behold, less than a year later, I also found myself transitioning to leadership at the State Department of Education. And what I will say is, while I was thankful for that transition and really excited about transitioning to the State Department because it married two things I love. It married education with also public policy. But it was an entirely different environment that required an entirely different skill set that I had developed or that I even knew that I needed. And so having Dr. Hart as my mentor was crucial during that time, because it was a very political environment, and I'll just say yes, a very political environment, and I hadn't developed that skill set. But once again, one that Dr. Hart had worked in a number of years. And so over the course of my tenure there, I was able to experience a lot of success. I was able to navigate a lot of challenges, and I was able to avoid a lot of pitfalls solely with the guidance and the mentorship of Dr. Hart. Literally, if she was not there to coach me, if you will, on the sidelines about how to engage not only with certain people, but to approach certain situations, I don't know that I would have been able to survive or even thrive in that particular context. And so that reason, and that reason alone, of course, for many reasons, but that's the primary reason why I'm excited to have Dr. Hart on the show to talk about the power of mentorship, because she was instrumental and continues to be instrumental in my career trajectory as well as my life. Please help me welcome Dr. Hart to the show. Dr. Hart, welcome.
Thank you. That was a beautiful overview of our beginnings. I appreciate that.
Well, no, it's all true. You have been and definitely were during those years such an instrumental component of my success. I remember one anecdote. I won't give too much of, as they say, the tea away. But I remember I had a mindset about how to dress in that context. And when I arrived, I realized that others weren't necessarily dressed like me. I was standing out, and that wasn't necessarily a good thing. And so I came to you and said, well, they keep saying to, dress this type of way, but like my mind is telling me that I should be dressing, the way that I am dressed. And so, you were able to engage me in conversation around, the culture of the organization and how I could blend in while also maintaining parts of myself. So, yeah.
Yeah, that is, because it's important when, as African Americans who are highly skilled and prepared for the workplace, we're very dominant in our knowledge, and that is a threat in itself. And so to enter the workplace and have a style, as they say as the young people say, the drip, may not be as receptive as we would like it to be, because it becomes more of an intimidating, unconscious behavior on the part of the observer. And what we want to be able to do is to slide and glide into the workplace and contribute formally, professionally, without having those distractions of, oh, wow, did you see his Tom Ford glasses? Did you see his Johnston Murphy shoes? And that distracts from the real intent and purpose is what's behind your contribution and why you're there. And so I think I remember that conversation very well. And when you made those adjustments, you had the positive results that I knew would be a part of your professional success.
Yes. Once again, you're always two steps ahead. And I'm grateful. I was grateful for it then and now. So, Dr. Hart, as we pivot toward mentorship, I've outlined for the audience I could spend literally this whole episode, just talking about how important you are to me and how just helpful, at the very least, that you've been to me. But as you think about your illustrious career over 3 decades in education, but also, like I said, you're a philanthropist, you're a community leader. When you think about how you started your career journey, do you have a mentor who comes to mind who first poured into you when you were starting out?
So, it's interesting. And I hope that anyone who is listening to this, it's easy to say that I had this person or that person. I had to jump many obstacles, and I had to do personal mentorship along the way because I didn't have that person that could pull me aside and say, do this. I was baptized by fire. I learned through trial and error. I had to figure it out as I went. And sometimes you can learn that way as well, because you make mistakes, you learn, and you know what not to do. So it was hard. It was really hard. And I think the biggest lessons were self-taught by mistakes. And some of these mistakes were very, very, very difficult. But as I climbed the journey of the education on the professional ladder, then I had a very good mentor at the top. And that was in the last part of my career, Dr. Moore, as I became the Deputy Associate Superintendent at the Department of Education. My supervisor, who was my Associate Superintendent, she was able to provide excellent mentorship to me for the last 11 and a half years before I retired. But prior to that, I have to honestly say it was, Malcolm, Esther, Deborah, Joseph, Malachi, and Jesus.
Yes, figures in the Bible.
So exactly.
Yeah, some of the best leadership lessons I think
so
you can learn.
That's hard. It's hard because, everybody has not experienced where you are trying to go, and they might not necessarily have that knowledge and background to share with you, especially as an African American woman and living in Arizona. It becomes very challenging. So it's not typical that people are going to reach out and help you succeed when they've already figure you or assume you as a threat or intimidating force that could, derail their opportunities that they are challenged by themselves. So I read the room really well, and I knew that I wasn't going to look for mentors who I knew were threatened by my existence to begin with.
So I think that's an important lesson for those who may not have individuals that they can turn to or connect with. I think you're starting to give a recipe for that shouldn't be a barrier for you achieving your goals or your success. And I think one of the things you mentioned, which is at the heart, pun intended, of Return to More, the podcast, is how do we look inwardly? And one of the things I've been transparent that I've relied on are sacred texts, as you just mentioned. Figures in the Bible who you relied on. But I'm curious as if you can give some additional details to your individual process. So you noted that you didn't necessarily have a figure, you had to figure it out. One of the ways is which you went into sacred text and, was led by your faith. But were there any more aspects that were crucial to your recipe?
So that's a very good question. And I have to be honest in terms of, because mentors are there. And I think that people that are looking for mentors have to be able to identify people who have achieved certain levels of success or lack of, because that can be just as important to the journey. So I would say that when a person is setting out from college or during college, start to read. You can do personal research. It doesn't always have to be somebody you can touch and talk to. You know, you have to read the scholarly works of different books, like the 48 Laws of Power. That's a very important document to hold on to if you're setting out to achieve certain levels of success. The Four Agreements, you know, the Testaments by Stephen Covey. You know, you have to lean into thy own understanding through knowledge achieved through a lot of ways that people will avoid, because they say if you put it in a book, it leaves us stupid. But you have to read those books and you have to get knowledge and learn other people's journey. And it becomes a personal mentor unbeknownst to you, because you know what you need not do. So it's hard, Dr. Moore, to be able to say that I have Dr. Moore or Dr. Hart or whoever as my mentor who can lead me and hold my hand. That is not always true and convenient and available for people. And so I say lean into personal research and read those documents and books, because it's already been outlined there in that research of people who've made those trips and those challenges and have followed those tasks and have stepped in potholes of despair and disappointment, but were able to get up and it's not what do they say? It's not, you don't fall, you, as long as you can look up. And so I had to use alternative measures, if you will, to try to try through my success and then share it with others. Because what's also important, Dr. Moore, is not to just share your successes, but to share your challenges, because that helps you achieve your success.
Absolutely. I mean, that's a full on cookbook that you've just given, right? The idea of introspection, sacred text, but also research. And you listed three sort of, I don't even have the term, but they're giant books. Those looking to
Right.
empower themselves, looking to develop in leadership, or even just looking to be better people. You've mentioned three crucial texts that I also have read. I want to pivot, if we could, Dr. Hart, because as I keep lauding, like I said, I'm really happy to have this conversation with you. You've been such a huge and impactful force on my career and my trajectory personally. And so one question I have for you, and this isn't just specific to me, but I know you also mentor others. What do mentors see that sometimes mentees often miss? So you as a mentor, what do you sometimes see in those you mentor that they don't see in themselves?
That's a very good question. And I have to say, you are probably one of my top mentees, because often when mentors share, you are, and I'm going to tell you why, and answering your question as well, because when you're mentoring someone, you share the important things, the obstacles, the challenges, the do's and the don'ts, or the be awares, and all other suspicious professional things that mentees tend to overlook or don't forecast. And you actually, page by page, I mean, narrative by narrative, quote by quote, you followed the Dr. Ann mentee down to the T. And what I liked about you, Dr. Moore, is as I shared these things with you, you gave me feedback. So you were like, you told me such and such, Dr. Hart, and I did this, and you were right. So it was good to get that feedback from you. And in answer to your question, mistakes that mentees make when you're sharing mentorships and qualities and challenges, and to see the ways that you can avoid disruption and dissatisfaction and unpleasant circumstances in the professional world, is to provide the feedback. And oftentimes the mentees will absorb and listen, and you never hear back from them again. Or they don't follow up with you. They say, okay, I've gotten it in my basket. I'm on my way and I'm good. And it's not necessarily true, because if you're mentoring someone successfully and the mentee is truly abiding by what you are stating, I mean, everybody's circumstances are different. There are pieces of it that work, and you never hear back from that mentee. They don't share, but you shared, you touched back, you reached back, you gave me phone calls, texts. And that is the playbook right there, the Dr. Jonathan Moore playbook of how to be an effective mentee. I already see it in production. So you were excellent. But that's the misstep that often mentees make. They don't follow up with their mentor.
Yeah, I mean, for me, well, one, thank you. Once again, you always speak life and are always affirming. But I felt like I had no choice. I mean, the context that I was in when we began our journey together, our relationship together, our mentorship relationship together, it was so foreign to me. And so it was like you were my cheat code. You literally had just, wrapped up your tenure in the place that I was entering. And so from if you think of it like a play or a drama, from the characters to the setting to the script to the music when it was going to come in to when intermission would, like, literally you were my script. And so I felt I had no choice because I either could like not listen and continue to like experience what I was, or I could decide to listen. And once again, fortunately for me, it's just funny how God works things out. But literally, you had literally walked the path before I did. So you were like leaving breadcrumbs for me. So yes, I had no choice but to listen and to try things. And I realized that's unique because I didn't feel like I knew it all. I understood fully. I had no idea what I was walking into. As smart as I felt I was and as prepared and as deserving, I quickly realized I had no idea what I was walking into.
But it did help me to lay out the breadcrumbs for you, Dr. Moore, if you will, because, the interesting part is that you had walked into the same professional environment that I had left. So I knew the corridors, I knew the hallway, I knew the doors, the windows, and the cubicles, and I knew that environment. So it was easy. I could walk you through it blindfolded. And so I think that kind of contributed to the amount of success that you did encounter. And you read the room, you forecast, and you had the playbook, and you used it to your advantage, because I just loved how you journeyed out of there, because you journeyed in, you were highly successful, you were highly productive, you made an impact immediately, and then you were able to step on the next tier on that crystal staircase and made your next professional move. And that was applaudable. That was outstanding, Dr. Moore.
Well, thank you, Dr. Hart. Thank you. Still with this idea of mentor-mentee relationship, was there ever a time when you had to give a mentee the hard truth? Like I said, you've always been affirming to me. And I think one, and I'll just contextualize for the audience, I listened. Literally everything she said, I listened to. And so I know that's not always the case, right? It's not like we're the same person or we may not have difference of perspectives. But in this
Right.
instance, with my relationship, with our relationship and where I was, I literally listened to everything. But there may come a time when a mentor or a mentee may have a differing perspective. Was there ever a time when you had to give a mentee the hard truth about, what they were seeking to do or what they were engaged in?
Yes. And the hard truth has to be someone who, receives criticism constructively. And that is the challenge as for a mentor, because oftentimes, when uh, mentees are equipped professionally, very intelligent. I've worked with some very dynamic, highly potentialed candidates, if you will. And the, you know, you often feel as though if you're smart, if you've been trained well, if you've been bred well, you've been educated, that you're good to go. And when a mentor kind of pulls your coat on something that you're not prepared to hear or aware of, it becomes challenging because along that pathway of that particular person's journey, no one has ever done that. So it's hard for the mentee to receive it in a positive manner. And unfortunately, what happens, they don't look, they don't come back to you. They disappear into their own world of, I can do it on my own. And so then the lack of success bites them. And then they come back. And by then is trying to recover what you've lost, because you should have listened the first time, as your mom would have said. I tried to tell you. Okay.
Yeah.
And then, cause
Yeah.
I'm involved in that currently right now. And I've put, my mentees in the boat of hope and hoping they will listen and follow through. And once they've gotten to that tier of success and professionalism, they forget and they glow and bask in that. And they make missteps along the way. But I'm always there to follow up with them, say, listen, I need to talk to you. Let's sit down. And the sad part, Dr. Mora, is that many of them do not follow up. And so I have to sit back and sip my tea and watch that fall. You know, it's lonely at the top, and getting those positions professionally you have to train to get there, but the difficult part is to stay there. So I cannot honestly say to you, Dr. Moore, that it has been achievable at the success that I would like to articulate today, because for the failure of the mentee to receive constructive criticism.
Yeah, well, I think you're touching on a couple of things. So when we think about the mentorship mentee dynamic, one of the things I appreciate about you, and I have many mentors. I probably have about 6 or 7 who I count similar to Dr. Hart, who are what I now call active mentors. And so, Dr. Hart, what you are as an active mentor is you genuinely care about the success of the people you're pouring into, and you want to see them win. And so you don't just sit back and wait, if you
Right.
will. What I appreciate about you is you are there to check in. If there had been a
Mhm.
period of time where we weren't engaging or due to life, you send a quick text, hey, Dr. Moore, is everything okay? Let me know when you want to get together. And then, of course, I'm right back like, yes, what's your schedule like next
Right.
week?
Yeah, you do. Hmm.
But I appreciate you taking, and perhaps I'm coining a new term, an active mentor, because you don't just sit back and wait for people to come to the fountain of knowledge. You are there, especially when you have knowledge of a particular context, to say, hey, I'm hearing or seeing or thinking this is happening. Would love to get together to see how you're strategizing or see what I can offer to support you. And I think that is also the mark of a good mentor, is the active participation on the part of the mentor.
Yeah, you definitely cut the page for mentee success. And it's important because I feel I have the apathy and I have the clairvoyantness to know that I need to do a touchback with my mentee. I haven't heard from him or her in a while. And I would like for my contributions to lead to some type of success, because the challenges are an alert to me as well. What did I miss? What can I share additionally? And it's so important in the day's time, especially forever, as it always has been. I like to point out everyone should make sure they have, as you stated, you have 5 or 6. Active mentorship is important. And it takes both sides. It has to be reciprocal, the touch back, the call, and to feel relaxed with someone. And that's another piece that I wanted to mention. Sometimes people don't feel comfortable, and you have to develop a friendship. You have to develop a camaraderie that exudes trust and loyalty and compassion and earnest feedback, and not something where the mentee feels competitive, or you can't look at mentorship as I want to be like her or him, because everyone's going to provide their own success at their own level of consciousness, and their own character brings out the kind of behavior that produces an outstanding archive of things that are going to lead you to better opportunities, where that you can end your career with an exclamation point, and not with anything
Yes.
unlikely
A
that's
footnote or a
disappointing to you.
dash.
There you go. That part.
Yes. Yes. So, Dr. Hart, I want to pivot now to you've given us some key tools and indicators for what makes a good mentor-mentee relationship. You talked about active participation on the behalf of both. You talked about a willingness for the mentee to actually listen and engage and take ownership of not only just implementing the advice, but how to implement the advice. I want to ask you, for those who are looking to mentor others, so perhaps they've reached a station in their life where they've learned a lot, they've grown, whether they've had to, similar to you, build their own capacity along the way, or similar to me, where they've had people that they could stand on their shoulders to figure things out. What would you say to someone who's actively looking to mentor others? What are some important considerations for those people?
I would say number one, find someone that is highly respected in their career, in their professional arena. That's important. And how successful they were themselves. Number two. And number three, character is everything. Character counts. And what is the true character and nature of the individual that you're seeking? Because observe someone from a distance, observe them up close, be a part of their world, and get to know them first and get feedback privately before you impose upon making that the person that you seek out. Because many people are successful in the world in which they work and live, but the character piece, that moral center, ethics, character, and where your heart is. You have to see that in people, and it has to be shown and demonstrated. And respect. How well is that person respected in their professional world? Are they someone who's just been successful and they've bombarded and through their career and just got there because of their dominance? Or are they really, appreciated? Are they really been true to the game? Are they sharing their successes? And is this something that appeals to other people as well? So ethics, that ethical piece, that moral piece, and the character counts for all of that.
Well said, Dr. Hart. Well said. So once again, I want to pivot toward the takeaways, key takeaways. We've had a wonderful conversation. I know we could both talk for hours as we sometimes do. But for the audience, I want to just wrap up a key takeaways from what Dr. Hart shared. One, mentorship is about showing up and showing up in an active way within the relationship. It's also about, as she just said, seeing people, seeing them in their context, but not just professionally, but seeing them for their character. It's also about calling them forward. How can you affirm people? How can you not only be a sounding board for critical feedback, but also helping them to implement in a way that's helpful to their context? And in my case, what Dr. Hart did exceptionally well and continues to do is simply reminding people of who they already are. And sometimes that's the most underrated aspect of the mentor-mentee relationship. So before we prepare to wrap up, I have a few reflection questions for the audience who may be watching or listening. As we've engaged in this conversation, I'd like for you to think about, one, a leader who helped shape you. Perhaps similar to my experience as we had in our conversation, you had a Dr. Hart in your corner, or perhaps similar to how Dr. Hart shared in her story, she was one who had to develop her own pathway toward building her capacity and her leadership skills. Two, I want you to think of a lesson you learned the hard way. Perhaps because you didn't have a mentor, or maybe you didn't listen to a mentor, as Dr. Hart also walked us through. 3, I want you to think about one thing you wish more people understood about mentorship. I think Dr. Hart and I had a very well-rounded conversation in the limited amount of time we had, but for things that we might not have been able to touch upon today. What is one thing you wish people understood more about? And then, lastly, think about a moment that made you proud recently. You know, for a number of us, Dr. Hart started the conversation around contextualizing how certain people may fit and how their identities may shape how they're viewed in the workplace, as well as how they experience the workplace. And so sometimes it's really important for us to step back and actually develop our own short list of accomplishments, especially when we're in contexts that don't necessarily remind us of those accomplishments. So as we pivot to our next segment, something that made you laugh. Dr. Hart, I have a question. This wasn't one of the scripted questions or one I previously asked, but I'm hopeful that you can share something that made you laugh recently.
I had to dig deep to this, and this is really funny and not so funny, but a person shared with me recently. They were on interviewing candidates for a professional position. And you know how you should come to an interview, right? And this particular person showed up at the interview with, how can I say this, with a T-shirt on that spoke to all the Black people that had been murdered by police, which is not something you would wear to an interview.
Yeah. So quite tone
And
deaf.
due respect to Trayvon Martin and Breonna Taylor and Sandra Bland and all those people, this particular person showed up at the interview with that T-shirt on.
Yeah.
And so you say that's not really funny, but it is, because that was a profound mistake to do that. I was just so alarmed that I had to laugh. So anyway, thought I'd share that.
Yeah. Well, I think it speaks to an issue we touched on at the top, that what you wear matters. And we can
especially to an interview.
Yes,
right?
we can, make light of that. And obviously the undertone, as you mentioned, is quite serious, but the actual experience is hilarious. The fact that, unfortunately someone didn't have the level of acumen to know that that might not be the most helpful thing or attire to wear, especially when we know what you wear matters to interviews in the workplace.
See, you laughed.
Yeah, well, because once again, I started at the conversation that was something you had to coach me on
yes.
Early on when I started my contacts. So what you wear matters.
Yes.
Yes. So once again, thank you so much, Dr. Hart. And to everyone listening, mentorship reminds us that growth is never done in isolation. It is always accelerated when you have people in your corner who believe in you and can pour into you. If this episode has blessed you in any way, you can not only find it on my website at returntomore.com, you can also find it on Apple Podcasts at Return to More, as well as YouTube at Return to More. My ask is that you like, subscribe, and share. And until you return to more again, always remember it's never too late to return to the truest versions of yourself. Be well.